Kempton Park Marathon. So what happened? Right, I'm going to break this down into kind of three sections. I'll talk about my goals going in. I'll talk about how the race sort of happened, and then a little reflection at the end. So my number one goal was to finish. So after Abingdon last year, when I got to 20 miles and then cramped, I just wanted to get through this. I wanted to get it finished. So really, that was my kind of A goal. B goal was to finish strong. And that, for me, that meant sort of running all the way through, maybe slowing down a bit, but still finishing with a reasonably fast couple of kilometers. And I kind of had a C goal, which was to go sub 4 hours, because I thought, well, at least if I do A and B, I should really take care of the number C. So that was really the only sort of time goal I had in the back of my head, but that was very much not my priority. So the race started about 9:30 in the morning, and just leading up to the day, we actually had a spout of really good weather in the UK, which is, it's gone from kind of quite a cold, wet spring to suddenly something that feels like summer. So I knew the conditions would be a little bit different from sort of what I'd trained in. Kempton Park itself, so it's a running race course, and you kind of run around 8 loops of a 5k loop sort of within the race course itself. You cross the race course about 4 times on every lap, which so you go from running on very flat sort of even path to quite uneven kind of cinders, which I suppose was a bit annoying, but that was okay. The 8 laps itself, wow, I'll get into that. So my sort of strategy, knowing that it was a bit hot, I had my support crew on hand, my family came with me. And I had 4 of these Run-Aid bottles, which carry 275 millilitres, and I had 3 of them filled with electrolyte and 1 with water. And my plan was basically for every 2 laps or every 10k was to sort of drop one of these and get a new one from my family watching. Gel-wise, I had 6 of the beta fuel gels from SIS, carried them in the waist belt. I had 1 caffeinated gel, or the nootropics, just before I started, and then my plan was to take a gel every 6k. So to the race itself. Now my strategy was to try and run the first half by heart rate. My plan was to run the first 2 kilometers of the 42 like super easy, so under 155 really for heart rate, and then to take the next 10k under 160, the following 10k under 160, so that brings me to about 22k without going above 160, so without really getting near that kind of low aerobic threshold, which ideally you would run the whole marathon at. Then I was planning to run the third 10k under 165. Final 10k, I would just give it whatever it had left. So in reality, I started off, and straight away, I think it was the sort of the heat of the day and the adrenaline, heart rate climbed a little bit higher than it should have done. However, I did pull it back. First K, I did it in 5:21, average heart rate of 152, so that wasn't too bad. Second K, 5:30. Average heart rate of 157. So probably even at the beginning, I wasn't quite hitting those heart rates that I'd said. For the next 10k, I really tried hard to keep it under 160, and I averaged around 159 to 160 for those next 10k. But I felt okay. 10k in, I was okay. So there were 5k runners, 10k runners, half marathoners and marathoners. There were relatively few marathoners in the field, but you're sort of aware kind of who's running a similar pace to you. There were a couple of guys I spoke to, one of whom was doing his first marathon. He was going for like a 3:45 goal, and they offered to run with me, and I said, well, I'm sort of running by heart rate, so I don't really know quite what my pace is going to be at the start. So I kind of went ahead of them a little bit. But certainly for the first 10k, I averaged around about sort of 520 per kilometer, average heart rate under 160. So it was pretty much the plan. Second 10k, the pace was pretty similar. It did start to drop a little bit, and I can see now, sort of looking at my Strava, my average heart rate was creeping up a little bit. So it went from 160, 161, 164 at about 19 kilometers, and averaged 166 at kilometer 21. So halfway, I was probably hitting my lower aerobic threshold, certainly, and that's your kind of 2-hour limits. I was kind of on the edge of my strategy. So I went through the half at 153. So I thought, well, I'm feeling all right. If I can just maintain this, I might drop a little bit, but that gives me a good buffer. I could probably still come in at under 4 hours. So by halfway, we're now looking at about 11:30 in the morning. We're reaching the peak of the day, and it was starting to get really hot. I could see people around me already starting to flag. By this point, we dropped the 5Ks had all finished, the 10Ks had all finished, the half marathoners were just sort of finishing, and I could see the heat was really starting to take its toll on people. So my plan to go through 4 bottles, I immediately said to my family, "Can you fill me up another bottle of water, and maybe another couple as well?" So I knew I was probably going to have to probably change over instead of once every 2 laps, maybe even once a lap. I also started using the water table that was on offer there at Kempton Park, and they had really small cups of water. But basically, every time I went through, in addition to my water bottle, I would also take a cup and sort of drink that quickly and sort of put that through as well, because I was aware I was needing more fluid than I'd planned for. So we are on lap 5 now of 8. But all of a sudden, I'd been hitting those kilometers, 5:20, 5:25, fine. Suddenly I dropped to 5:30. And it felt hard, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to slow down a little bit and sort of see what happens. And weirdly enough, I was aware of the people around me that I'd been kind of matching or overtaking, or they'd been overtaking me. They were also starting to slow. I dropped a 5:38 at kilometer 28, and the guy that had sort of been almost in front or behind me all the way up to that point also slowed a considerable amount. So without even talking to him, I knew that he was struggling a bit as well. My heart rate just started climbing. So I've got an average of 169, kilometer 27, 172 average. So I'm getting really near kind of like threshold point, or sort of 1 hour till the end of the race. And I thought, I've got over an hour to go. So I've got a choice here. If I carry on at this pace, I'm kind of likely to burn out. But at the same time, I didn't want to slow too much, because I thought if I start walking, that never bodes well for me. Whenever I've ever started walking in anything, it's basically been a walk home. I've found it very, very hard to get going again. So at that point, I was really probably one of my lowest points, weirdly enough, in the marathon at that point. And all these thoughts were going through my head. I could quit. I could stop. It was just so easy just to walk off the course. And at that point, one of the guys I had been running with, who I'd sort of been aware of, he'd been running in front of me or behind me, pretty much the whole way around my pace. He had dementia on his t-shirt. He just stopped running. I stopped as well and just said hi, how you doing? Obviously he wasn't in a good place. I said, "Are you going to finish?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got to. I'm running for charity." Something just clicked in my head and thought, okay, I've got to see this guy finish. Okay, it's a hot day. I think I can help him. So I said to him, okay, well, let's try running for 4 minutes and walking for 2. It's not something I've ever done before, but that's what we did. And we didn't actually drop that much pace. We started hitting kilometers at around sort of 6:30, 7 minutes. So we only really would lose like about a minute and a half per kilometer. And I hadn't thought about it like that. I think whenever I have gone for runs, if I've reached that kind of I need to stop point, I've just stopped and walked. And that has meant my pace has sort of slipped to like 9, 10, 11 minute kilometers. Almost basically it's all over. But by jeffing, by sort of running, walking, you actually are able to kind of keep a pace going beyond what you sort of would be, obviously, if you're walking. And it kind of just keeps you going. We sort of did that. Last 2 laps were very, very hard mentally, I think, for both of us. I think it got harder and harder for me. I think he went through like a second wind. Towards the last lap, he sort of said, "Should we try running this whole lap?" And I said, "I'll give it a go." But by about 5K to go, my calves were starting to cramp. So it was more like running for 3 minutes, walking for 1. But somehow we got through it. We got through the end and we crossed the finish line in 4 hours and 7 minutes, which at the time I think I was pretty devastated with. I think in my head, I thought 3:45, 3:50 was going to be hard, but very achievable. On reflection, actually, to finish my first marathon in 4 hours and 7 in that heat, and in that course, that was psychologically much, much tougher than I think I realized it would be, was actually something that I can be proud of. The fact that I finished without Chris, I wouldn't have made it through. So thank you, Chris. It was good to connect with you afterwards on Strava as well. Basically, everything became hard in that heat. I saw lots of other runners struggling out there as well. There's a YouTuber I'm familiar with, Matt Runs 18, who was going for sub 3, and I think he crawled home in like 3:38. So if people like him were being affected that badly by the heat, I feel slightly better. And what it does is it gives me a time to sort of now aim for. I am very close to pushing the button on going to Abingdon again. Now that I've done it once, I have better strategies in my head now to cope when things get tough. I'm just a bit more aware now of the sort of things that my body will go through. So I hope you enjoyed this mini series, my first ever series of documenting some marathon training. Please give it a like, share your comments, share it with friends. If you're out there training for something that you find tough and that scares you, then good on you is all I can say. And I wish you all the best. And remember, you're only racing yourself. Some days you win, some days you lose, and some days it's just about discovery. And I think Kempton Park was about discovery, and I've learned an awful lot, and I'm grateful for that. So take care. See you soon.